Paul, in struggling to understand what reality is all about, normally we talk about cosmology and the universe or the laws, etc. Sometimes it's important to look at the processes involved. Particularly one is causation. We think causation in our daily life is quite obvious. You do something and one thing follows another. But as a scientist, what can we say about causation that can give us confidence in understanding the universal flow of development?
The concept of causation is not very well defined in fundamental physics. We prefer to talk about interactions, and I puzzled over this a lot in my PhD thesis because that was a project involving interactions that went both forward in time and backward in time. So I'd think very carefully about what does it mean. This atom emits a photon, that atom absorbs a photon. Does this atom cause that atom to absorb the photon? Well, you can invert the time, and it's symmetric. And so causation is something which appears only when you have an arrow of time, when you have a large collection of things. And so if there's a chemical reaction, let's take something more dramatic, you explode a hydrogen bomb, a lot of photons go out into the universe. You'd say that the reason that the flash of photons spread out was because the bomb exploded. They caused the flash of photons. And you wouldn't want to reverse that. It wouldn't seem to make much sense that the photons come in and the bomb assembles itself. But that's tied to the time asymmetry of the world. So where we see a strong arrow of time, causal language seems to work. You throw a stone at the window. Why did the window break? Because you threw the stone. But down at the level of individual particles, what causes what doesn't seem to make a lot of sense. So then it's interesting to look at the intermediate position. So you take, say, a cell, not a human being throwing a stone, but a cell in your body. What can you say there about causation? Well, that's a much more tangled story because life, part of the magic of life is it's full of feedback loops and all sorts of complicated things. You want to say, well, did the upregulation of this gene cause the activation of this or that pathway, which then in turn downregulated another gene, but then that affects the first gene? You know, where does the causal chain start? Part of the problem, I think, that people have in understanding biological systems is they want to think in physics terms like a linear chain of causation, that you trigger something and it has downstream consequences. Doesn't work that way in biology. It's very rare that you can do that.
Now go one step further and go to the nature of consciousness or mind. I think my mind is causing me to want to raise my hand. And there's a lot of biology that may contradict that, neurobiology. How do we deal with causation when we deal with mental processes?
Well, the truth is we don't know how to incorporate mental processes into our scientific description of the world anyway, because so I take this very sort of primitive view as a physicist. What I would really like to know is exactly the arm-raising trick. I want to raise my arm. Goodness me, there it happened. How do thoughts, in this case, I want to raise my arm, move matter? What an astonishing thing. How can that happen? And then the second thing I'd like to know is, what does it take for me to have those thoughts or sensations or emotions in the first place? What type of physical systems can give rise to mental phenomena, consciousness, if you like? We know it's going to have something to do with the swirling electrochemical patterns in my brain, but what about the swirling electric patterns in this building? Is that conscious? Most people wouldn't think so. We're struggling to come up with a way in which we could even identify what gives rise to consciousness. I don't believe, as a few people do, in the so-called panpsychism view, which is that everything is a little bit conscious. I think consciousness has something to do with complexity. It's an emergent property, but putting one's finger on what that complexity is, I don't know. And so when we're talking about causation, we'd like to think that we have something like free will and that our wills determine our actions, so that they're at the beginning of a causative or at least an explanatory chain. I did it because I felt like doing it. You soon get in a muddle because, of course, our what we think of as our wills are a product of all sorts of mental processes that are going on already. And so, again, we have trouble finding the origin of that causal chain.
What about top-down versus bottom-up causation? Is there anything significant in that type of analysis?
I believe it's absolutely critical if we're to understand living systems. We see many dramatic examples in biology of what we call top-down causation, and my favorite one is that I have a colleague at Arizona State University who launches bacteria into orbit, and when they're in weightless conditions, they express different genes than when they're down here on Earth. It has implications for the health of astronauts. So here, the microenvironment of the cells, namely it's the absence of a gravitational field, has an effect down at the genetic level. You get similar genes switching on or off when you apply electric fields, pressure, shear stresses. All of these things are global. They're all at the top level of description, but they have effects down at the genetic level. So all of that sort of signaling from the environment, the organism, neighboring cells, right the way down to the level of DNA, that's top-down causation, and biology wouldn't make any sense without it.
Some people might misinterpret that to say there are mystical things going on at higher levels that somehow manipulate atoms and subatomic particles outside the laws of physics or something.
They do, and I think that's because top-down causation was introduced originally for the mind-body problem, having to do with the mind at some higher level having causative efficacy over atoms in the body, and that's a minefield. That's why I prefer to concentrate with top-down causation on the cell. Chromatin, for example, which is the chromosomes, the material of chromosomes, is the meeting ground between bottom-up and top-down causation. Nothing magical or mystical. We're not talking about vital forces. We're simply talking about the fact that you're coupling, in biology, you're coupling all levels of scale and structure, and you simply cannot give a consistent description of what's going on by concentrating on the bottom level alone. And there really are causative influences, chains of causation, if you like, coming down from the top to the bottom and circling back again. You get into these feedback loops, but you just can't, it's not a one-way street, not just bottom up.